It was raining harder than it had all week. Not the kind of cinematic drizzle that looks pretty against a window pane, but a full-bodied, soul-drenching storm. The type of rain that feels personal, like the sky is tired of pretending and just gives up. Hannah Ellis stood at the bus stop outside her downtown office, hugging her coat tight around her. Her phone buzzed with birthday wishes from friends and family, but each ping felt like a cruel reminder of the day she was supposed to be celebrating. She'd walked into the office that morning expecting a slice of store-bought cake from HR and a dozen half-hearted happy birthdays from co-workers she barely knew. Instead, she found a brown cardboard box sitting on her desk. No ribbon, no note, just her name scribbled on a yellow sticky note. She stared at it for a full minute before her manager appeared behind her, mouth tight and eyes not quite meeting. Hers, "Can we talk in my office?" Those 6 words did more damage than any storm ever could. 15 minutes later, she was unemployed. A restructuring, they said. Budget cuts. She wasn't being singled out. They assured her it was just unfortunate timing. Unfortunate timing. She wanted to laugh, but her throat tightened instead. She packed her things slowly, not because she had so much to carry, but because she didn't know where she was going next. Her rent was due in a week. She had no savings, no backup plan, and no one waiting at home to tell her everything would be okay. By the time she reached the cafe at the corner of 8th and Willow, she was soaked to the bone. The warm smell of cinnamon and espresso wrapped around her as she stepped inside, trying not to drip too much on the welcome mat. She didn't even notice the man sitting near the window until he waved. "Hannah," she blinked, then recognized him. James Rivera. He worked in accounting, 10th floor, different department. She only remembered him because he always smiled when they passed in the elevator, the kind of polite gesture most people forget to do. He was a quiet guy, the kind of person who remembered birthdays even when HR didn't. She didn't expect him to be there. She didn't expect what came next either. "I heard. I'm sorry," he said gently. Rising from his seat, "Sit, please." She hesitated, then lowered herself into the seat across from him. On the table sat a small chocolate cake in a white box, a single candle, her name written in uneven icing. She stared at it. "How did you?" "I asked HR. I figured if no one else was going to celebrate your birthday, someone should." The kindness in his voice nearly undid her. She didn't cry. She was too stunned, but something shifted inside her. A crack in the armor she'd been holding together all day. He pushed a fork toward her. "It's not much, but I thought you deserved at least this." She picked up the fork and took a bite. It was rich and bittersweet, just like the moment. "Thank you," she whispered. They sat in silence for a while. The cafe buzzed around them, laptops clicking, milk frothing, baristas calling out orders, but their corner felt like a pocket of calm. After a few minutes, James leaned forward. "I know this isn't what you expected today, but what if it's a beginning instead of an end?" She laughed bitterly. "A beginning to what? Debt, stress, applying to jobs I'm not qualified for." "No," he said, his voice firm but kind. "To something better." He reached into his coat and pulled out a notebook. "I have an idea. Actually, it's more of a plan. You've always been creative, right? You mentioned once in the elevator that you wanted to start your own thing, something with writing or content. What if we made that happen?" She blinked. I've been saving up to start a small media platform, something real human, built on storytelling and kindness. You'd be perfect for it." "James," she said slowly, "you barely know me. I know enough. I know you show up early. I know you helped organize that charity drive last fall when no one else volunteered. I know you care. That's the kind of person I want to work with." His words hung in the air like the scent of coffee beans and second chances. It sounded impossible. It sounded crazy. And yet, for the first time that day, she felt seen, like someone had reached into the storm cloud above her and handed her an umbrella. "I don't know," she said honestly. "I don't have any money to invest, and I've never built anything before. You've lived, you've fallen and gotten back up. That's more valuable than half the resumes I've seen." He smiled, soft and steady. "Think about it. You don't have to decide today." She nodded, unsure what to say. He stood, zipped his coat, and handed her a folded piece of paper. my number, and the rough draft of the platform outline. Call me if you want to turn a terrible day into the start of something new. Then he was gone, just like that. She sat there staring at the paper, the cake, and the storm now softening outside the window. The cafe lights glowed warmer than before. The birthday she thought would be the worst day of her year had taken an unexpected turn. Maybe, just maybe, the world hadn't closed a door, maybe it had cracked a window. It was 2 weeks since the day Hannah Ellis got fired on her birthday, and everything was different. Not easier, not solved, but different. That morning, she stood barefoot in her small kitchen, pouring cereal into a chipped bowl, staring at the notebook James had left her across the table. She hadn't called him right away, partly because she didn't trust the idea, partly because she didn't trust herself. After all, who starts a new life because a stranger bought them cake and hope on a rainy Thursday? But she couldn't throw it away either. Something about his words, his belief in her, kept replaying in her head. Not many people had ever looked at her like that, like she mattered, like she could. And so, the notebook stayed on her kitchen table, unread, unopened, but not ignored. Then came Tuesday. Her rent notice slid under her door with a quiet thud, and suddenly the future stopped being a foggy fear and became a ticking clock. She sat down, opened the notebook, and read the plan. It was detailed, thoughtful, shockingly organized. James had mapped out a vision for an online platform built around real stories. Stories of people helping people, of small kindnesses, of resilience, loss, hope. He called it the Ember Project. The idea was simple but powerful. When the world feels cold, even a single ember can start a fire. He wanted to collect those embers, record them, share them, spread them. People are exhausted by bad news, he'd written. They're numb. They want to feel something again. Not just shock, not just outrage, meaning. By the time she finished reading, Hannah felt her fingers twitch with a feeling she hadn't known in months, maybe years. Purpose. She called him. He picked up on the second ring. I hoped you would, he said softly, like he'd been waiting without pressure. They met at a local library cafe that afternoon. It was quiet, the kind of place that still smelled like old paperbacks and second chances. They talked for 3 hours. James shared more about his life, how his sister had survived a suicide attempt the year before, how their family had nearly crumbled under the weight of silence and fear. He said that after that, he couldn't go back to crunching spreadsheets, like none of it mattered. He wanted to build something human, something that might stop someone else from falling through the cracks. I don't want to go viral, he said. I want to go deep. That stuck with her. She said yes. The first few days were clumsy. They worked from coffee shops and library rooms. Hannah began writing stories based on interviews she did with people in her network: nurses, janitors, teachers, single parents, immigrants. Anyone with a story that revealed some sliver of humanity most people overlooked. James handled the logistics: domain registration, branding, building a simple website with free tools. They fought once over tone. Hannah wanted the stories to have raw edges. James worried about overwhelming readers, but they found their rhythm. By the 3rd week, they launched a soft version of the site and shared it with 50 friends. 45 read it, 10 shared it. By week 4, they'd been mentioned in a newsletter, then a podcast, then the emails started. A nurse in Ohio wrote about how a patient's final words changed her life. A mechanic in London shared how he fixed a stranger's car for free during a snowstorm and ended up saving a mother and baby from a dangerous night. A teenager in Vancouver submitted a photo essay about the homeless man who taught her how to see people again. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't viral, but it was real, and people kept reading. More importantly, they felt. James told her they had 12,000 site visits by the end of the 2nd month. It's not just the traffic, he said. It's the letters. People need this. Hannah couldn't argue. For the first time in years, she felt like she was building something that mattered. Not just another product, a ripple. Then came the call. A woman named Dana from a small nonprofit media fund in Boston had seen the site. She offered a small grant, $7,000, to keep the work going. No strings, Dana said. Just keep telling the stories you're telling. Hannah stared at James after the call, stunned. This is real, she whispered. It was always real, he replied. That night, they sat on the roof of her building with plastic cups of wine and watched the city glow. Like it was trying to wink at them. They didn't kiss. They didn't talk about love. But something passed between them in the silence, something strong and quiet, like trust. But life, as it always does, tested the dream. In the 5th month, James's father had a heart attack. He had to fly to Arizona, leaving Hannah to manage the site solo. She didn't sleep for 3 nights straight. Submissions poured in. She messed up a post, missed a meeting. She broke down on her kitchen floor the 2nd night, sobbing into her sweater. I can't do this, she whispered. I'm not enough. But then, in her inbox, she found a letter from a woman named Priya in Manchester. The subject line said simply, "Your story saved me." The message read, I was going to end my life last night. Then I read your article about the bus driver who stopped for a crying man and didn't ask why. It made me believe people still care. It made me wait one more day. I'm going to get help. Thank you for reminding me I exist. Hannah dropped her phone and cried harder than before, but not from pain, from the staggering weight of why. When James returned, she hugged him at the airport longer than she'd meant to. You built something beautiful, he said. You kept it alive. We did, she whispered. Their rhythm picked up again. The grant helped them hire a part-time editor and upgrade the website. But the soul stayed the same. No ads, no outrage, just embers. One day, 6 months in, they got an email from a major Canadian news network. They wanted to feature the Ember Project in a segment called The Good We Missed. It was a primetime spot. They were nervous, but they said yes. The interview was simple, just the two of them sitting on mismatched chairs, talking about how the worst day of Hannah's life became the best decision she never saw coming. I thought losing my job meant I'd lost my worth, she said on air. But it turns out, I'd just lost my direction. Sometimes a breakdown is the first step to a breakthrough. The host nodded, visibly moved. And what would you say to someone watching right now who feels lost? Hannah smiled softly. You're not broken. You're in between chapters. Hold on. Something beautiful may be on its way. The segment aired on a Tuesday night. By Wednesday morning, their site had crashed from the traffic. By Friday, they had over 100,000 subscribers. They were invited to speak at local schools, to train other storytellers, to consult with nonprofits. A publisher reached out about turning their stories into a book. People wanted more, but Hannah never forgot why they started. Every week, they still published one story, just one, carefully chosen, deeply human, and slowly, it began to change. People, a year after she lost her job, Hannah stood outside that same cafe where James had first bought her cake. This time, she held a small white box of her own. She placed it on the table across from him with a grin. Happy birthday, she said. He opened it. Inside, a single candle, chocolate icing, her handwriting in uneven script. Thank you for the plan. He looked at her, eyes full. It was your fire, he said quietly. I just brought the match. They didn't need to say anything else. Because sometimes, the most powerful stories are the ones lived quietly, the ones that don't shout but burn steadily like embers in the dark. And so the Ember Project grew. And more importantly, it glowed. Not with noise, but with light. Not with fame, but with meaning. And Hannah, she never went back to a cubicle. She never had to. Because she built something better with courage, with truth, with cake, and with kindness.